I had a franchisee who came to me and he says to me, I need some help. Well, what help do you need? I need you to tell your officers to leave me alone. Well, why? Why do they do it? He says, well, I'm over here in the Carolinas and I've got an ice cream program that's keeping me alive. And your guys are coming to me and saying, get rid of that ice cream. We're not Dairy Queen. In 1997, the year after we rolled out ice cream and drinks, our system hit 1 billion in sales. It was 44 years old. We hit 1 billion in sales, 44 years old. 4 years later, we doubled it. So from 97 to 01, the system went from 1 billion to 2 billion because of the store level sales were so explosive, the marketing was explosive, the new store openings were explosive.
All right, welcome back to the Better Human podcast. Today we got an amazing guest, Cliff Hudson, who was the former CEO, or is it CEO or chairman, Cliff?
Yes, chairman,
president.
Chairman and CEO of Sonic. Yep, former.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, what a company for you to lead. And I mean, what an exciting conversation for us to have today, which is your story and experience when it comes down to leading this large enterprise level. But more importantly, your book is called The Master of None. Tell me about that, because there's a nice one-liner that we hear about the jack of all trades. What's the book about?
Well, the book is about my path and my career. It is called Master of None, subtitle, How a Jack of All Trades Can Still Reach the Top. And in my case, I have a whole variety of interests, and it wasn't, as I entered my adult years, not that anyone really knows what path they're going to be on, but we may plan, but mine developed over time, and I had unexpected opportunities that I did seize as the opportunities arose. And over time, with some extended areas of on-the-job training, and you might say apprenticeship, I did develop some greater skills, particularly in business and running a franchisor, and had some very serious success with it. But I still look at my path as one of general preparation, liberal arts education, working to be a creative thinker, and embracing things along the way that struck me as fit with my strengths and felt like it would be interesting and enjoyable. So that's my pitch to other people looking at their careers.
That's cool. So let me ask: were you ever a franchisee, or were you always the franchisor side?
I was always on the franchisor side. My path, if you want me to give that real quickly,
I'd love to hear it.
My undergraduate work was in history. My graduate work was in law. And so I was working in corporate law, pursuing Sonic as a client. And they were clever and instead got me to come in, and I joined the company and spent 8 years as general counsel. In that time, we bought the company once. We recapitalized it the second time. We took it public. I was centrally involved in all of those. By the time we took it public, I'd had quite an education in corporate finance and about the company generally. After we went public, my boss asked me to be chief financial officer. I did that for a year, then COO for a year and a half. And then my boss, the CEO, left the company. The same day, the board asked me to become CEO, and I was CEO for 23 years. So that was my path.
Wow, what a calling, huh? Going in from corporate law to finance to operations, CEO. I mean, we might argue that what a benefit to you being the CEO, coming from that background, having that experience on the financial, the legal side, and specifically the operational side, right? Because for like any franchise or franchise model, operations is the key to success, that consistency, right? Where is Sonic? Here's a question: is Sonic the franchisees? Are they franchisees, or is it all corporately owned, the different stores?
The system, really throughout my history, there was about 95% franchised. So it really was about it was about brand building. It was about marketing strategy. It was about product acquisition and distribution, but it was also largely about convincing franchisees to go along these paths and committing their capital along the way.
Right. I've always found, and I've done a lot of work in the franchise world, by the way, just as a sidebar, and it's always an interesting relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor, which is the franchisees looking to come in, be an entrepreneur, start their own business. They're investing capital, but they're buying a proven model, right? They're buying the Sonic model.
Right.
And then I always find it interesting when the franchisee wants to push against the franchisor, or they want to do their own marketing, or they want to run their own spiffs, right?
Right.
And it's a tenacious relationship sometimes. It could be really filled with conflict. So, I'm always impressed when the franchise grows, specifically when there's franchisees in there, because the navigation of people and almost like this weird relationship of employee but not employee, right? Entrepreneur, yet really sort of that corporate person. So, was that part of some of the challenge that you experienced in your career, which was that tug of war relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor?
Absolutely. And early in my career with the company, the relationship was quite antagonistic. And my objective, as I moved into the COO and then CEO role, my objective was to reduce the adversarial nature of the relationship through engaging franchise leaders in strategy development and engage them in all levels of testing any initiative, so that we got the benefit of their expertise as well as their buy-in. And the consequence being, in no small part, because we were successful with many initiatives, they made more money, and they made a lot more money over time. And I think that's one of the things that said to them, regardless of what the history is, regardless of different paths, et cetera, this is working. And so as long as it works, let's stay with it, Yeah. So we got their buy-in in a big way, and they grew and grew and grew with us in a huge way.
Yeah, you just nailed it there, which is the importance of enrolling the leaders and the individuals versus forcing them, right? Because people need to feel significant and involved in participation, right? So, I mean, that's a really great lesson in itself, which is the importance of building and managing your community as a community, right? Which is, sure, there might be decision makers in this community, but having them participate and share and vote and give their perspective is so important. I tell you, I've done a lot of work in franchise models, and you could boil down a successful franchise to a few different things. And one of them is when they're operating with their franchisees as a community. So very cool. And for Sonic to be such a large community as well, I can imagine what the undertaking of that was. So cool, man. Super cool. So tell me about your book. When did you start writing it? Was it like after your time at Sonic, or was that sort of where it was birthed? And
it was birthed while I was still at Sonic. I think it was about 2017, that I thought, interesting. When I would tell some of my Sonic stories to people, I got very interesting feedback, and I would have some people say, you ought to write a book, And so I did start working on it in 17. The challenge became in 18. We had, so I signed a contract, with HarperCollins to write the book. And in 2018, along comes Rourke and wants to buy the company. And so while I was working on the book, I also had this pressure start coming along of, someone trying to buy the company, which was not my plan. And so it created a funny dynamic trying to write the book. And so I didn't finish it until after the transaction had occurred, and then I was actually a little bit under the gun to get it finished. So it happened during that time, but I think particularly once the transaction, the buyout had occurred, it gave me more opportunity to reflect on, what did drive the business over time, what some of the better lessons were that I could share with other people earlier in their career, late in their career, whatever.
What was that like? What was that whole acquisition and shifting of cultures? And how, I mean, if we were to give advice to people in a corporate world, which is, here are the top few things you got to know about navigating that type of acquisition or merger, what would those things be?
Well, so let me be clear about what part of that I can give you feedback on and what part I can't. In terms of post-acquisition, I'd been set to a CEO for 23 years, and I was whatever I was, 64 years old or something. So this deal closed on a Friday in terms of someone acquiring the company, and I moved out of the company on Saturday, the next day. So I don't have a story for you about how to deal with the transition. I mean, I can tell you that they approached us in the spring of 2018, and they were quite adamant about buying the company. The stock had been in the mid 20s for a good while, 24 to 27. With initiatives we had underway in the summer of 18, June, when we issued our quarterly earnings release and so on, stock went up into the 30s. And frankly, I thought that their attempt to acquire the company had probably come to an end then in that summer of 18. But by August, they came back and they said, the stock had gone well into the 30s, and they came back and told our banker, okay, we still want to buy the company. We know it's going to be north of $40. Well, that shocked me, and it shocked the board. And they came in and kept making offers, and they finally made a deal with their board in September of 18 that a stock that had 5 months before been $25, they paid $43.50 a share. So they bought the company. So that summer was very odd. As I said, I've been running the company for 23 years. We had big initiatives underway that I could see having a 5-year, enormously positive impact on the brand, 5 years running. So we were literally beginning to roll those out, or I should say, really get the benefit of having spent years developing them. So it was an inopportune time from my standpoint. For the buyer, it was a great time. For us, for me, having put all that into planning and building, it was frustrating. But that's life. That's life at a public company,
Right. Which, I mean, I could see what an emotional pinch that could create, which is you invest your passion and your focus and your vision, and to have it unrailed. I used to do a lot of work at the White House. I went through 3 administrations, and what I found very, very interesting, which I learned early days at the White House, was the people we were working with were known as career workers, career staff.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter what presidents or administrations in there, these individuals stay. And on a very worst case scenario, every 4 years, you're getting a new boss, right?
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, that's just a personality and a people thing. But then what I started to realize was each administration comes in with its own focus and goals and plans and projects and stuff like that. So what became very difficult for people would spend, for example, during the Obama administration, the Obamacare, people spent their entire careers putting that together. And then new administration comes in, and in one foul swoop, your job is now to undo all of that. And I thought, man, what a mental gymnastics individuals are going to have to go through in navigating this. Was it similar for you, having to let go? And
well, it was similar for me in just that, having to let go, walk away from it. When the day I did, I moved out on that Saturday, which, okay, it's a weekend, but Monday when I went to my new office, it was weird, it was very strange for quite a while. Now, and eventually there were things that I engaged in that kind of served as, stimulating things, new relationships, new activities that were quite interesting. And so I stay busy and I enjoy what I do. It's been difficult to watch from a little distance to see the company be dismantled and moved and so on. But that is what occurs in that circumstance. But I can't say it's been easy to watch it occur.
Yeah. So if someone was going in, let's say a leader, a CEO, going into this publicly traded company, as per what you just said, which is, if you're not careful, you could really get emotionally pinched. What would be some guidance or maybe some perspective you can share with them? Say, hey, I'm sure you're always thinking about and looking about these things in order to successfully navigate that public company.
Yeah, well, it is a reminder that, as it turns out, it's not your company. There were always public stockholders. We had whatever we had, 10,000 stockholders or whatever, and it's their company. And if they've seen the stock at 25 and somebody will offer them, a 70% premium, most people are going to take that. Most investors are going to take that. And ours were quite pleased with the result, including some local individuals who I would see after the deal occurred. And I would be a little concerned that they might come up and be critical about the transaction. Instead, they'd come up and thank me because they were stockholders and they made a lot of money. So
Right.
now as to the individual departing that circumstance, I mean, you gotta find a place in your head where you can make that transition. But relying on relationships that have been supportive in the past, personal, professional, turning to those people for that transition, how they've gone through it, et cetera, is important. And then, you don't want to say yes to everything that comes along, but at the same time, finding some things as reasonably quickly as possible for you to kind of dive into that will stimulate you and utilize your talents is also critical. In my case, I spent 2019 working to complete the book that I had been working on and did complete that kind of in the summer, fall timeframe. And I kind of thought that would lead to speaking and conventions and so on and so forth. But then something called COVID hit. And so there were no conventions to speak at, So at any rate, but I did enter into some board service, nonprofit and for-profit, and work with some friends of mine in really on some small private equity activity. So cool. It's important to make the transition and realize it's not your home anymore, and you got to move on and shut up. So.
Well, the good news now is the conferences are back on. The stages are looking for amazing speakers like yourself. So, hey, if you're after today's episode, if you're interested, if you need some help with that, let me know, and I could help with some introductions. But I think it would be an awesome story for people to hear, which is your expression of what you put in the book. So let's jump into the book, Masters of None. Okay. Tell me about the book. What are some of the themes in there? What could be some of the lessons we share with the audience today?
Well, there are several about leadership in an attempt to kind of help other people that are maybe jack of all trades as well, and trying to figure out what should my path look like. And so there are several things that are intended to kind of open the mind up about how to be looking for opportunity. As an example, there is the old adage of keep your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone, etc. And my pitch is keep your eyes open and keep your head up, because I think some people, and maybe more as a younger person, you have the view that you're going to create your own opportunities. You're going to plan, and you're going to plan your path, and you're going to create the opportunities. Well, in fact is the opportunities are presented to you, and you may have had nothing to do with those opening up. Now, you may be prepared for the opportunity, but you may not. You may have had little to do with causing it to occur. This manifests itself several times in my case, and I do detail in the book. We bought the company after I'd been there for 2 years, mostly because I don't think there's any way for our management team to buy the company, but for the fact that a hostile franchisee came in, said he was going to buy the company. He told everyone he was going to do that. The founder, a member of the board of directors, got a stock option on a majority of the shares to head him off. And he turned to management and said, you can buy this option. You can exercise the option at fair market value. His view was we had no money, and so he was simply taking a monkey off his back. But the fact is, in the early on LBO days, we raised the money and bought the company. So this was an opportunity we had nothing to do with creating, and yet it changed our lives, and it certainly changed the direction of the company pretty dramatically. And so that's an example of something. Keep your eyes open and be open to opportunity. Now there is listen. I mean, from a leadership standpoint, listening is highly underrated, And so what's the story I give on that? Story in my book is I had a franchisee who came to me and said, I just moved into the COO job. And he says to me, this is 1994. He says to me, I need some help. Well, what help do you need? I need you to tell your officers to leave me alone. Well, why? What are they doing? He says, well, I'm over here in the Carolinas and I've got an ice cream program that's keeping me alive. And your guys are coming to me and saying, get rid of that ice cream. We're not Dairy Queen. So I make conversation with them. Now, ice cream was not a big deal for our system. It was maybe 3% of sales. So I asked him, what does your best store do? Just to find out. He says, well, my top store does 30% in ice cream sales. Well, I must fall over. And so I said, don't discontinue it. Let me get the marketing folks out there. You show them what we're doing. So a year later, what do? We roll out an ice cream program for the whole system. And what happened the next year, because, I mean, it wasn't just ice cream, it was drinks and ice cream. And the next year, the average store in our system saw their profits go up. Their profits, I'm not talking about top line, but their bottom line increased 40% in 1 year because of that program. Now that, in my leadership time, we rolled that out. I had been CEO about 13 months when we rolled that out. And it changed everything for my path forward because that explosion in store level profits paid for capital investment in the entire system to retrofit the trade dress, you know. It paid for tons of new store openings. It paid for tons of marketing because suddenly our operators just had cash they'd never seen before. So here's that consequence in that when I say it changed everything, in 1997, the year after we rolled out ice cream and drinks, our system hit 1 billion in sales. It was 44. It was 44 years old. We hit 1 billion in sales, 44 years old. 4 years later, we doubled it. So from 97 to 01, the system went from 1 billion to 2 billion because of the store level sales were so explosive. The marketing was explosive. The new store openings were explosive. So listening to that operator, when really all he was asking for was to be left alone, but instead digging in and saying, what does this do for you? And when he told me, then my reaction was, well, we need to copy this guy, not shut him down. So,
you know, that's just such I was going to say such an example of confidence because, you know, at a big corporate level like that, we sometimes get a little too caught up in this is our system. This is the way we do things. This is me, and you close yourself off. And, you know, the advantage of a franchise system is you've got, you know, a ton of business and entrepreneurial minds in there, right? And, you know, regional things change as well. And when I think of Sonic, I mean, ice cream is it's one of the main things. If I was to picture the brand and think of the logo and the colors, the big ice cream is there, right? So to think that once upon a time this wasn't even part of the business model is interesting, right? Do you know what the number one flavor of ice cream sold is?
Vanilla.
Yes, exactly, right. And people love vanilla ice cream, like vanilla shakes, the whole sort of thing. So so wow, what an interesting story in the sense that you could imagine what would have happened if you didn't listen.
Yeah,
if you didn't go.
My entire career there would have been completely different had we not followed him. You know, now we refined it. We refined it and did it in such a way that it would work for the system. But the kernel of it was in his program, and that's where we. And I have another example for you. Just listening to somebody else in a setting where you may kind of otherwise kind of say, when do I get out of here? When do I get to the airport? How do I get home? You know, I was sitting in a by invitation only conference in Chicago, and it was to talk about the industry. There were about, let's just say, 10 CEOs there, and Nation's Restaurant News had hosted it, private room, and we're just talking about the industry. Well, the group that had paid for all of this to get everybody together was Visa. And so at one point in this one-day session, they now this was about 2000, okay, so not quite 25 years ago, but it was a different world. You'll see why I say that in a moment. The Visa representative gets to give her commercial, you know, let's say at lunch. You know, we all had to listen to it because they were underwriting the day. So what did she say? You know, almost 25 years ago, she said, and we were almost none of us were fine dining, and maybe one or two casual dining. Most of us were QSR. Most of us were fast food. So she says to us, if you don't accept credit cards, you miss a big part of your business. And you're kind of sitting there, well, okay, tell me about it. I mean, here Sonic got 5% of its sales from credit cards, 95% cash, So I'm kind of saying, really? What she says is, who makes the decision for buying food in the family? Mom. Kids second, dad's third. So if a woman is working and she's on her way home, if you don't make it easy to use a credit card, she's not stopping at your store. Now I walk away from that saying, wow, it's that important. And so long and short of it is just listening to that. In that case, it was a vendor. What I did was go back to the office. It took a while because I had some folks didn't buy into it. But got some fellows, at a Sonic, you pull into a parking stall. There are usually about 25 of them on lot. You pull in. And at that time, 25 years ago, 23 years ago, if you wanted to use a credit card, you had to hand it over to the car hop who took it inside, charged it, brought it back, which meant most people weren't going to do that. And today they certainly wouldn't do it. So the answer was, well, suppose we attach a credit card reader to the menu housing in the stall, just like pay at the pump, at a gas station, which I was using all the time, and so was everybody else. Okay, so here's the point. I told you a moment ago how in 2001 we hit $2 billion in sales. We began testing attaching the credit card reader to the stall, 2001, 2002, 2003. By 2003, we had it rolled out to the whole system, meaning credit card readers at every single stall. We found two things. One, customers love it. Two, when they utilized it, the average ticket was 40% higher than if they used cash, 40%, 40. Now, so 2018, I leave the business. It gets bought out. The transition in that time, we'd gone from 2 billion to 4.5 billion in sales. Wow. And that incremental difference of 2.5 billion, from 2 to 4.5, that incremental sales of 2.5 billion was 100% credit cards.
Wow. Leadership and business I see it as the ones that are willing to take the risk and step off the edge, right? To discover the next platform or the next area. Yep. I can't believe time is flying by so much, and we might have to schedule a part 2 for this and continue. But I do have two questions for you. Question number one: in considering the world of entrepreneurship and business and leadership today, what guidance or advice or things would you share for leaders to be effective today? Like, if you were to build a business all over again, what type of leaders would you want to hire?
I would want to hire leaders who had compassion for their people, and first and foremost, wanted to help make the people they're leading successful at the individual level and at the collective level. The person that has those characteristics and that mindset can become a great leader. And when people are convinced that they're being led by someone who has that compassion for them, and where they can be successful together and not at the other's expense, people will follow that leadership a long way. So I think that's one of the number one characteristics I would look to in bringing along other leaders.
Well, we were just chatting a little bit before, and I was sharing a little bit about the work I do, and that's what it's based upon. Our tagline is making humans better humans. It's not building a better leader, it's having a better human in a leadership position, right? Yep. And passion and empathy and listening and stuff. I think his name was it Charles Green or Robert K. Greenleaf, one or the other, but servant leadership. And, talked a lot about being a steward and community and empathy and compassion and stuff, the human skills, right? And in the world of technology and automation and AI that we live in today, it's even more important that we're tuned up on that interpersonal skill, right?
Yep.
Very good. Let's tell the audience a little bit about the book. Where can they find the book? If they want to learn more about Cliff, how could they get in touch with you? If people want to book you as a speaker for their conference, where do they find out about that?
Well, in reverse order, the easiest way to find me is to go to my website, cliffordhudson.com. And there you can buy the book, but you could also reach me there, with the idea of other communication, whatever that is. So that's the most direct way. You can also buy it on Amazon and most large book buyers or booksellers rather. So that's where you can go to get that. And it's my wife tells me it's a fast read. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah. I should also say when you talked a moment ago about the effective leaders have that flexibility, but push the envelope, step forward. I would also put that in the category of innovation. And that is that I think today in business, no matter what your business is, innovation is a matter of necessity. And that's something I talk about in my book as well. It's not an option. Innovation is a necessity and driving forward. And I think that's a critical piece.
And using that imagination and, looking at let's see where this leads and stuff. I think we try to play it too safe sometimes in this world that we live in, right?
Yep. Yeah. And those that play it safe may come out okay, but they're likely to have a little bit more mundane experience and they may become irrelevant. But
and they might not build a $4.5 billion organization.
Yeah, well, we at Sonic did that collectively, and a whole lot of people participated. A whole lot of people enjoyed the fruits of it, but had a great life experience along the way as well.
Amazing. Tell me, so at the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, or sometimes we think it's the most important, which is, what do you think we could all do to be better humans tomorrow?
Well, it's a variation, I should say, on what a leader can do, and that is to put yourself in the other person's shoes, to have compassion for the circumstance they're in, to have whether the term is empathy or sympathy, depending upon what they're experiencing, you're experiencing, to have sympathy for other people's circumstance, and help their life move to a better place while you're moving yours there as well. And with that outlook, I think relationships will be different, communities will be different, and life would be better.
Yeah. A wonderful old saying, right? You're only as good, or the team is only as good as their slowest runner.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right.
So what do we do to get them to come up, right?
Right.
Cliff, this is great, man. I wish we had some more time, but to that note, let's get part 2 scheduled, because I think it would be great to continue the conversation and pick your brain a little more. To the audience, we're going to have all of Cliff's links and everything for his website and the book. Definitely go and check it out. I think, it's very fortunate that we have the time with you, Cliff, because at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that the greatest way to teach is to role model the things we want to see. And sometimes the best role models come from the long career and experience where they've been through that game a few times and they can coach and mentor. So for the audience, I think this is a mandatory reading. Go and pick up Master of None, Cliff Hudson. You'll find him wherever you go in Google, and we'll get that website out there for you. And really appreciate your time, Cliff.
Happy to be with you, Greg. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. To the audience, if you like today's episode, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to share. I just connected with you, Cliff, on LinkedIn. You could find Cliff on LinkedIn. So if you want to get in touch with him there, but go check out the website. Stay happy, stay healthy. We will see you next time.